Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv. Wolok, my partner in crime, as always, Vasili Gianarakos. Vasili, what's going on, bro?
Doing well, Yariv. NHL playoffs have been really entertaining. We have the Phantoms starting another series in their playoff run against the Hershey Bears as we record this. So lots of hockey in terms of playoffs to be watching, and it's been exciting, right? Like a lot of good games for NHL playoffs. AHL's been pretty interesting too. But how you been, my friend?
I've been doing pretty good, dude. Been watching a lot of hockey, like you've been saying, especially NHL stuff. I'm excited the Phantoms are back on because I actually care who wins. It's fun to watch the playoffs. It's always like the hockey's great, but like outside of hoping that Edmonton and Colorado lose to get their draft picks, there's like
Yeah, you don't have much invested in it, right?
right, yeah,
For me, I'm just hoping for like the most overtime possible. Whenever I watch
right,
any playoff hockey, I'm just saying, hey, this is going to overtime. Sign me up. I want to watch sudden
yeah,
death. It's the most entertaining. Seasons could be on the line. Like last night, that Devils Carolina game, I was completely immersed in the second
hmm
overtime, and I'm like, hey, this is a 3-1 series, but like this has been a crazy game. And the craziest part for me about that game was Markstrom had like I think 37 saves they were saying from like the fourth goal that he let into the fifth goal that Carolina scored, which is nuts. Like you would potentially make 37 games in a full actual 3-period game. So the fact that he was standing on his head like that and then you lose, like that's pretty tough. Obviously we're Flyers fans, we don't want to see the Devils do well, but I just like as somebody who's played net and seeing a goalie have a performance like that just to lose, that's a rough one, man.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean that's the playoffs for you. Like you could play well and still lose. You know,
Yeah, of course.
like
The
you can
Devils
be a
played a
good
pretty
team and
decent.
still lose.
Yeah, I mean the Devils. That was a strange game for them. Like they were up. I was literally looking at the score because I was doing something else and I was
Yeah.
getting ready to watch the game after. And I'm like, oh, Devils are up 3-0. This is gonna be an easy win for them. And I checked the score again in the second. And I'm like, oh, it's 4-4 now. I guess I should watch this game. It seems wild.
I when I saw they were up 3-0, I was kind of like, that seems flimsy. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But
Maybe.
because of the team they were playing more than just because they're up 3-0. But not that I predicted that, but um
Carolina can come back for sure. I
yeah.
mean, I would just say for the Devils, like it's clear to me, without Jack Hughes, completely different type of team. Like I just feel
Yeah.
like the confidence level, like seeing them as a team with Hughes versus not, like I feel like they're just not as confident in general, which makes
Yeah.
sense. It's their best player, but
It does make sense. All right, well we're gonna dig into we'll go through the full playoff recap as we've been doing. We'll do that in the second half of the show. We'll talk Flyers in the first half, Phantoms in the first half. Then we'll talk playoffs in the second half and some updates on some Flyers prospects as well. This might be a shorter episode. We always say that, and then it never ends up being shorter, but it's definitely a slow week when it comes to Flyers news. But we'll do our best. Okay, before we get started, just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for notifications to get notified when we release these episodes. And for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes. Give us a follow and a rating there as well. Please do that if you have not done that so far. That is the best way to support this show. Also, sponsors, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. It's a perfect time to go get a cheesesteak. Make sure to go to Jim's on 4th and South and grab yourself one of the best cheesesteaks in Philly. Also, Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. They will help you with all of your insurance needs. They will help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company and make sure you get the best claim possible. Hit out Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. And also want to give a brief shout out to our partner, SportsSpider.com. Guys, if you're tired of searching multiple websites for sports news, SportsSpider.com has you covered. They collect the latest articles, videos, and podcasts from around the web and organize them by your favorite teams. If you want to stay as up to date on our Philadelphia Flyers or the NHL in general, make sure to check out sportspider.com. The link is in the description for the audio and the video. And make sure to check them out. They are our partners. All right, let's get into it. We'll start off with coaching news. The big one being one that was announced yesterday. And this one is pretty pivotal, at least piece of news as far as who could be the Flyers head coach moving forward. Rick Tocchet has officially resigned from being coach of the Vancouver Canucks. It was rumored, we brought it up last week, that it was rumored that he could be leaving the team. There is much speculation that he is high on the Flyers list, which they have said does not exist. I don't believe that for a second. I also don't believe that their coaching journey has not started. Sure, maybe formally has not started. Maybe they have not interviewed anybody. But the idea that these guys who have been around the game for so long do not have an idea of who they would want to interview is asinine to me. And if you even look at like the Chuck Fletcher era and bringing in John Tortorella, like they knew they wanted to interview Tortorella before that third party brought Tortorella forward. Again, they have names in mind, and Tocchet is definitely one of them. A lot of people online seem to be pretty split on it. I think probably some more old school fans, loving the idea of somebody like Rick Tocchet coming back to Philly. Again, had a great reputation here. Has a pretty good reputation from a fan base standpoint as a coach. A lot of people seem to be kind of low on him because of what happened this year between JT Miller and Elias Pettersson and his ability to handle that situation, plus their decline from their previous couple years of success, having missed the playoffs. This is a big piece of news. I don't know where I stand. I don't think the Flyers are going to be as obvious as most people think. Like a lot of people are reacting like, "Oh, this is our coach." And look, I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm not saying that he is a top candidate. But I don't think the Flyers, while I do believe they have names in mind, I don't think they've made a decision of any kind as of yet. And neither do I think Tocchet. There's also the idea that Tocchet is also a former Penguin, who also the Penguins are also looking for a head coach. We'll talk about that after Tocchet. And then there's the most interesting piece of news that comes with it. And Vasili, I'm going to open up to you. Is that um, Rick Tocchet is a beloved coach by a lot of people's standard. I actually just listened to an interview with Connor Garland, who was talking about how great he had him in Arizona and then again in Vancouver, how much he loves Rick Tocchet as his coach. But the big name out there is Quinn Hughes. There was a big rumor that they wanted Tocchet to stay around because Quinn Hughes going to be a free agent in a couple of years and is rumored to want to play with his brothers, but idealistically probably be closer to his brothers. Might be difficult for him to end up back in Jersey, though it is possible, or in New Jersey, it is possible. But maybe would want to go closer to Jersey, like right over the bridge. And would a guy like Tocchet be tempting for a guy like Quinn Hughes? So all of that said, is that Rick Tocchet is now officially out there, and he will be officially talked about probably for the next month plus until the Flyers begin their interview process, at least start making some headway. I assume a lot of people are going to kind of stick with the fact that they think he's going to be the Flyers head coach.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the news comes out that he resigned, so now his name's officially thrown into the hat or in the ring or whatever you want to call it, I
Sure.
guess. Just in terms of like Tocchet as a coach and if he would be a good fit here, like I think it's hard to say, right? Like I think there's a lot of people judging him off of his past experiences and what they've seen from him in the past as a coach. Every coach learns from every stop they've been at. He was an assistant for a long time in the league, right? Like he was an assistant in 2002 back with Colorado till 2009 with Tampa. Then he became a head coach with Tampa, was an assistant after that with the Penguins from 2014 to 2016, where he won two cups. Then becomes a head coach again with Arizona till 2021. And then obviously, is in Vancouver until he resigns here. So I think when you look at the track record, right, like everybody's saying, oh, look at those Arizona teams. You can never do anything with them. Those Arizona teams are really bad. So the fact that he could get them to the playoffs in the first place in one of the seasons that he coached them, I think that's pretty admirable considering the roster those years that he coached that team. And for Vancouver, right, he was brought in after they had some troubles, obviously making the playoffs. First season as like a full-time coach. He gets them, to game 7 against Edmonton. And they almost get to the conference finals. And then obviously this season is a disappointing in terms of where they were and how they finished based on, their playoff performances the season beforehand in his first full season. So I think when you look at it, right, like he seems like a guy to me that players love to play for. Like look at Quinn Hughes, the way he's kind of raved about him. You talked about that Connor Garland interview. I also saw that as well. We all know about how he was the Phil Kessel whisperer in Pittsburgh and how he turned, a guy in Kessel that might not have always been the most motivated on that Pittsburgh team into, a 30 goal scorer year in, year out. And also he was, really motivated during those playoff runs and really produced. So I think he could be a good fit, right? Like I think people trying to say that, oh, it's the stock Flyers choice. He's the ex-Flyer. Why would you do something like that and are outraged? I think it's just kind of a little bit of short-sightedness. Like he's obviously had a lot of success just in terms of being an assistant coach. He's had, limited success as a head coach, but I think there's definitely situations where he's done a good job. Like I think in Vancouver, even though it ended in this way, I think that he did do a pretty decent job as a coach. I think in that locker room, I would imagine that whatever rift was between Elias Pettersson and JT Miller might have started way before he became the coach. As the coach, you're obviously supposed to try to, foster a good relationship in the room and a good culture, but sometimes things are beyond you, right? If something like that started beforehand, how are you going to now enter yourself and hope to resolve it? It's not always the case if two guys really do not like each other. So for Tocchet, I think it's really interesting. I wouldn't say that the fact he's a Flyer or anything shoehorns him into this position. I think it definitely plays a factor. I've heard, Elliot Friedman talk on 32 Thoughts that there was rumblings throughout this year that he wanted to move closer to home. Is that the Pennsylvania area in general? I'm not too sure if Pittsburgh becomes a destination too, like you said, right? Or Philadelphia. So we'll see where it goes. But everybody's thinking Philly. There could be other options as well. Like look at the Rangers too. They have a head coaching vacancy and might be more attractive too if you're a coach looking to maybe take the reins of a team that would probably jump right back into playoff contention, whereas the Flyers is a little bit of a question mark. So even though I think Tocchet is a name that makes sense due to the Flyers ties, and I think he could be a good fit. I don't think it's necessarily like the choice. And I think people are making it out like, oh, it's a foregone
Right.
conclusion. It's going to be Rick Tocchet. I don't think that's the case, especially when the evaluation process hasn't really begun yet whatsoever, right? Like I think to your point, they do have a list of guys, short list they probably want to look into and guys they want to talk to, but really they haven't started evaluating any of these guys. Like you can look at track records and other coaching successes in other places, but until you actually interview them yourself as a staff, it's hard to really say, oh, this guy fits what we're looking to do or that guy fits what we're looking to do. I think the interview process is really one that needs to be had first, right?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think maybe they've even talked to some lesser known coaches because it would go more under the radar versus like talking to somebody like Rick Tocchet that's going to get out like overnight, right?
Yeah, of
Or
course.
even a guy like David Carl, like people are going to find out. But other options. And again, you brought up the Todd Nelson name, previously on this podcast, and there's other coaches in the AHL playoffs. There's other coaches still playing. If somebody gets eliminated in the first round, sometimes teams get trigger happy. So I don't think the Flyers are necessarily going, okay, the names available right now or the names we're going with, Rick Tocchet is available. Let's jump on him ASAP.
Yeah.
One, you got to see that is this something that the guy wants, right? So you have to have conversations with him. I guess in the Rick Tocchet standpoint, just with him being close to Keith Jones, close to the organization, you think maybe they've had a conversation in the past about it. What is clear though by Rick Tocchet walking away from this job is that there is obviously interest that was pointed out to him because you don't walk away from a job to not have a job,
No.
right? So realistically, he probably has talked or has heard or, in some kind of way is, informed that there are teams out there interested in his
Yeah.
services. So otherwise, I don't think he would have taken the risk to
And
walk away from a coaching job.
I would say shout out to Charlie O'Connor if anybody listened to PHLY. Like he mentioned that from sources he heard within the organization that there was rumblings Tocchet, wanted to leave Vancouver midway through the season and go somewhere closer to home, wherever that may be and what he thinks that is. Who knows? But I'm to your point, like I'm sure that he has likely talked with other teams in the sense that, hey, we're going to be interested in you. once you officially resign, let's resume the conversations, perhaps, right? But I would imagine he has inklings and probably realizes other teams are going to want in on his potential coaching services. One thing I will say too, to your point, is playoffs aren't over. Lots of good coaches are still employed that may not be employed once they get eliminated from the playoffs. One coach that I saw a rumor about online, obviously just a rumor, but John Cooper potentially being let go if Tampa loses again in the first round. Once again, I mean, if you're talking about coaches with a track record, like that's one guy I think you'd want to obviously, take to the top of your list if he becomes available. So that's why I kind of want to mention that because we have these names defined, but there's always other names that might come up that end up being even more attractive for teams that they thought might have never been available, right? Like if you're Briere and the staff, they're not going into this offseason or going into the playoffs thinking, oh, John Cooper's going to get fired and I'll have a chance to hire him. They probably aren't thinking that way. They're probably just saying, hey, if it happens, obviously we'll be interested, but they're not planning for those types of things, right? So I think it's going to be a wait and see because there's likely some coaches they might be interested in that could get let go here down the playoff
Yeah.
stretch. They might want to interview, right?
Yeah. And I think that's why they're carrying the attitude that they have, kind of letting people, oh, we haven't even started yet because they're like, they can't be like, oh, we're waiting on some more firings, because
But
they
that
prop,
could be the reality, right?
right.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what I would do, right? I would be like, okay, here's my list of guys I know right now. Maybe it's 20 names or so. And I'm like, you know, okay, who else could be added to this list? And if you look at that and you look at names like John Cooper, and then and then you go through the realistic conversations, would this guy even want to come here in the situation we are? Then, and again, I understand why people are so, gung ho on the fact that they think Tockett's going to be the next coach. Again, a relationship matters. But I will say, and I've said this countless times, is that Briere is sneakily aggressive. And we've seen time and time again that he does things that people did not anticipate. He does things kind of out of nowhere. Again, they're pretty good at keeping things hush hush. So I think the reality that like people have been calling this for a long time and that's going to be what happens. I would, take a gut check on that one because that has not been the case with the Flyers since Briere took over. Now the John Tortorella hiring, that was kind of seen ahead of time, but if you look at that process, hiring a third party, Fletcher was incredibly predictable. He wasn't very good at trades. He was like pretty mediocre at best at trades. He wasn't the best at that stuff. He had some skills, some things that he did well. But he was kind of a
Nice guy,
predictable.
really
Yeah.
nice guy.
Yeah,
That
no.
seemed to be his best quality, that he was a very, very nice guy. Everybody
Yeah.
seemed to love interacting with him. So
Yeah. I mean, look, he's not Fletcher was nowhere near as bad as people like to paint him as if he's like this complete incompetent buffoon. That is not what he was. He was mediocre, right? And we need great. That's the reality. And so far, Briere has shown to be aggressive in the right kind of ways to get returns that exceed or meet expectations. So, when you hear big name guys, a lot of people are kind of counting us out where they're like, why would they even want to come here? I'm like, I don't know. They've been pretty good at convincing guys to come here
yeah,
before. John
some coaches
Tortorella,
like challenges too, right?
right.
Like to people's points. Like if you are a coach that has a lot of pedigree, you just came from a team that's won a ton. Taking on a challenge of a team that is building itself up and getting to that next phase, that might be something that interests you because you've changed your outlook. You might want to try yourself at something new, right? You got to factor those things in too.
Well,
There's a lot of reasons why a coach might want to change situations and go to a team that might not be labeled as, oh, okay, they're a perennial cup contender right now, right? Like sometimes there's a journey to be had with bringing a team into that sphere, not just starting there, right?
yeah, no, I also think that people don't realize that they have a negative bias against their team because they're emotionally wrapped up in it. And I totally understand that. And I blame media actually for a lot of it, where there's always this like tinge, and I'm not going to name any names, but there's always this tinge of like, we have it worse. We're less appealing. Why would anybody want to come here? Why would anybody do this? And like, that's really not a correct analysis of the situation at all. That's like the woe is me attitude, which really annoys me. And people might call us positive on here. We're pretty even keeled with a lot of what we say. There are reasons to come here and there are reasons not to come here. And the reality of the big market team with the unlimited budget, the third youngest team in the league. Like all of these things with cap space opening up, guys like Mitch Cobb, there are reasons to come here.
Yeah,
Even
there's an
even
attractive pitch you can sell to a coach that has had a track record somewhere else. If you're trying to say, hey, we know, you've had success elsewhere. We might not be at that same level yet, but if you look at the foundation we're building, we're going to get there, and we want to
right.
bring you in to try to get the team over that hump into that space because you've had that experience, right? That's
Right.
kind of the sell job. If you're Briere, you have to provide to a coach that might be more well established, right? So that's my
Right. And
thoughts.
and they're not taking over like when Tortorella took over and they're like, "Hey, we're just removing players right now." They're in a different phase now too, right? So there can be that promise of, "Hey, we're going to be adding to this group that you look at right now. You see
Yeah.
holes, we do too, and we plan on filling them over the next 12 to 24 months." Which is quite obvious. Again, it's in the numbers that that is what they're looking to do. So outside of Tocchet, the other big name out there, and this one's, I didn't think he would get fired, to be honest
I
with you.
didn't think so either. I was surprised.
I didn't think this was going to happen, but Mike Sullivan has been officially relieved of his duties as well by Kyle Dubas. Dubas did say that he had a conversation with Sidney Crosby prior to doing it, which is also interesting, which is what I thought would keep him there. Um, and with Sullivan leaving the Pens, I mean it opens up maybe the top coaching um
Candidate.
coaching can thank you. Word escaped my mind. Candidate available. And maybe he's more likely to go to like a team like the Rangers, a team that's like because the Rangers were President Trophies, the winners the season before. I think a team like Boston's very similar situation as Philly. A lot of the jobs that are open are going to be pretty similar to Philadelphia, but maybe
Anaheim. Yeah.
right, yeah, exactly. A lot of like the Rangers are kind of the outlier of that group, unless one of the big playoff teams, like if a John Cooper gets fired. I could see that a lot of teams really wanting to take over that because thinking they could take that core and maybe win a cup. But I do see Sullivan as being the prized guy out there. I do think the Flyers will interview him as well because I think the appeal for him is my guess as somebody who doesn't know that much about him is he's been living here for a long time in Pennsylvania. So the idea of not having to move too far away, obviously you have the Rangers out there as well. And then there's also the caveat of the Boston Bruins, which I recently found out that Mike Sullivan is Charlie McAvoy's father-in-law, which is an interesting connection.
Yeah, and he
That
went to Boston University for
right.
college, so he's a
So
Boston guy for
so it
sure.
might be Boston calling for him, but again, this is why you have a list of teams. But Mike Sullivan being available is definitely very interesting. I imagine the Flyers will want to interview him. Whether I can't see him just going with Boston without interviewing other places. So I do see him being interviewed by the Flyers at some point, or at least them picking up the phone and gauging his interest.
Yeah, Sullivan's a really interesting one. He's had a ton of success, obviously, as a coach with the Penguins, won the two cups. I mean, the last few seasons, not as much success. They've been on the downturn. I think at this point, it was just they needed a change. I don't think it's the fact that they were maybe disappointed with his job as a coach per se, but think about how long he's been the coach of the Penguins at this point. Like he
Yeah.
was named coach of the Penguins, Sullivan, when? Like I think let's see here. I got it right here. In 2015, like it's been 10 years. You don't really see coaches last for 10 years in this league at this
Yeah.
point. And to be honest, it's likely due to the two cups, his connection with Crosby in that core. That's why he lasted that long. But it was time for a change for them. And it's interesting because Pittsburgh opens up. You have Tocchet, who used to coach in Pittsburgh when they won cups. It could make sense for him to slide right back in, but who knows? I think Sullivan will be an interesting head coach. There's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be lined up to try to interview him. Like we said, he's shown a lot of success in this league. When you've won a cup multiple times, teams will be lined up to interview you for their open positions. That's just how it is. I wonder, like he served as an assistant under John Tortorella for many years. Like I do wonder if that connection as well. If who
Hurts.
knows, they Tortorella and him have obviously have conversations. We've heard Tortorella state that. I'm sure they've talked about the Flyers. I don't know if that makes the Flyers more interesting to him because he probably knows potentially about the team more due to that and the fact that Tortorella is kind of his mentor. Because when we look at the years he was the assistant, Sullivan, right? He was assistant for the Rangers, I think, in Torts' full tenure there. Yeah, because he coached from '09 Torts to 2012, and Sullivan was the assistant for the Rangers from '09 to 2012. Yeah. Then he went with Torts to Vancouver and was assistant as well. And then from there, he took over the Penguins head coaching job when Torts went over to Columbus after Vancouver. So they spent like 7, 8 seasons almost together on the same bench. So I'm sure these guys probably talk just based off that relationship. I wonder if that will have any role in the interview Briere has with him and potentially joining the team. I'm not really sure, but it's certainly really interesting. We've always heard the fact before of Tortorella getting fired of that idea that he was going to move up to, be in a front office role, and Mike Sullivan, when he gets let go, would be like the perfect replacement because he's essentially like his protege in a sense in the mentor type of protege role. I don't know if any of that will happen now, but I just thought it's interesting to throw that out there, the relationship between the past head coach and potentially a candidate you might have as your future coach here.
Yeah, I could see it hurting the Flyers' chances, to be honest with you. I don't think it's going to be a sole reason. But I think when you look at, the connection to Boston, the fact that his mentor was just let go by this team, the likelihood of it happening, I think it definitely hurts it. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I have no idea who the Flyers are going to pick as coach, but
Me neither.
I could see it being an issue, and we'll have a better idea of who their coaching candidates are as we move forward. There will be
Yeah.
names that will make it
Well,
public.
we'll hear
We'll
like
hear the
to
short
your
list.
yeah, we'll hear the short list. We'll hear guys have been interviewed, stuff like that. It'll make it, more apparent as to who's kind of in the running. I would say like in my perspective, I'm open to Tocchet. I'd be open to Sullivan. I think personally though, like I would like them to hire like an up and coming coach. I think
Yeah,
where the team is at, how young the team is, like not up and coming in the sense that not a lot of experience, somebody experienced, but I mean like somebody that's had a lot of AHL success, playoff success, and you've seen that tangible success, and now it's like, hey, you've done it at this level. Let's see if you can do it at this level
right.
with a young team now. I
That's
don't know if that's the route they're going to go, but I think that should be something they should be really interested in doing.
Yeah.
So we'll
A lot
see.
of the coaches that are finding success in the NHL came from that route. And can we find the next one? That's why I totally agree with you. And I think that's why like all these like names that we keep hearing, I'm like, I'm much more like in the camp of like I'm not gonna see this name coming. Like
Yeah.
I might not even know who this guy is who gets hired in the end. He might not have been named at all by pretty much anybody.
It's not a
Um,
bad thing always. So
right. Yeah. I'm more of like I just want to see what Briere does because we haven't seen Briere hire a coach yet. Right. He was kind of along for the ride with the Tortorella hiring. He wasn't the guy making the call. And even at that time, like we don't even know if Fletcher was the guy making the call, right? That was like an organizational
yeah.
decision
And
because they
I
knew
always
Fletcher
get
was on his way out.
yeah, I always get interested too because Briere was a former player. Like when former players hire coaches, it always interests me because they themselves dealt with coaches. So they typically like I just look at it and I think like what would Briere be looking for in a potential coach? Like, does he take his perspective as a player and look into that, or is he specifically focused on what this team needs as a coach? I don't know, but it's something that I always wonder about too.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. The other one was David Carl officially pulled himself out of the Blackhawks running. So the Blackhawks were, I guess, aggressively trying to get David Carl to be their head coach. They're pretty young team. At least their core is young. They have a lot of older players on that roster because they try to speed the process up, probably a little too early. Didn't really matter in the end because they still stunk this year. But he officially pulled himself out. I don't see him. I don't see the Flyers thinking that a non-pro coach who's 35 is the best option for them. David Carl might be the best coach. I don't know. But I just see it as like the organization wanting to bring in a guy with like a winning pedigree at the pro level, whether that
Yeah.
be AHL or NHL. And I think that's important to them. When I think about a guy like Tocchet, though, I do think of a guy like he hasn't won his cup yet, and I look at a guy like Craig Berube who kind of, bounced around, or at least like didn't find his home initially in Philly, lost his job here, then went somewhere else and then won a cup. Like, you know, a lot of times it's like those type of guys. And then, there's still Brad Shaw is out there. We don't know. He might be the right option. We really don't know who the Flyers are going to pick. But David Carl being eliminated from the Blackhawks or pulling himself out makes me
Pulling
think that
yourself out, yeah.
I just think he's not that interested in leaving his situation. I think
No,
he's
that's what
still,
that points to. That's what that
yeah.
points to,
And
right?
he's
Like if
still really
you're
young.
super young, like 35, you got to think you're 35 entering the NHL, you've never been a pro coach before. You might be coaching guys older than you.
Right.
That could be a tough environment to enter, especially if you've never had the experience to be able to, you know, handle those personalities of essentially millionaires when you've never even been in that situation before. You're dealing with college kids, completely different scenario. I personally think where the Flyers are at right now, he might be a great coach. I just think you can't take the risk
Right.
because there's no guarantee he's going to be a guy that can have success his first go around, right? It's like a lot of coaches. I think he might be a guy that does have success, but it might be like second or third tenure or something where the first tenure is more of a learning experience, especially straight out of college. I just think of Hackstall, right? Like look at Hackstall with the Flyers, Hackstall with the Kraken. I mean, did he improve with the Kraken? Not a lot, but he did get better as a coach. You could tangibly see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would just say, like, if you're the Flyers and if you're looking to kind of enter that next phase, take your team to the next level, is hiring this coach that hasn't had any experience in the NHL at the pro level, even the right move? I mean, for me, I wouldn't have done it. I think Carl taking himself out of the running for a prestigious organization, a original six organization like the Hawks, that's pretty much meaning to me that he's not playing to coach the NHL next year, no matter who offers him a job,
Yeah.
because that's a prestigious organization, right? Like if you never
Like
coached
the
at the pro level
Flyers.
before,
Yeah.
yeah, if you ever coached at the pro level before, like typically you're jumping at offers like that. So for me, him not taking that, yeah, I think it's more of an indication he might not be ready for a job like that himself. He's kind of stating that to the
Yeah.
NHL, right?
Yeah. And ideally for me, like, and again, I could be completely wrong about this. I look at a guy like Carl and I'm like, all right, I want you to be my Phantoms coach first, where that's where I look at a guy like LePerriere, who maybe he will make a good NHL coach one day. I don't know if he will. And so far he's been like hit or miss at the AHL level, but he's a relatively young guy too for an NHL head coach job, and he will also improve as a coach. So it's like I kind of want somebody who's been through all of that already,
Go
who's
through the learning pains, has
yeah,
kind of been through that situation and can, already apply that in this new scenario with the
yeah.
Flyers. You don't want to get a guy almost learning on the job here because sometimes mistakes can happen when you're learning on the job,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, and there's a lot of assistant coaches out there in the NHL, not just Brad Shaw, like guys who have been AHL head coaches that are assistant coaches now. That's the thing where I look at Brad Shaw. I'm like, he doesn't really have any experience or much experience as an NHL coach or an AHL coach. That's where my hesitance comes from, where I'm like, I
yeah, his
know what
experience
you,
as an assistant. That's
right,
he's
yeah.
been an
He's like,
assistant. That's the typical role he's used to, right? So
right. And I want somebody in with like a game plan who has their way of coaching. But again, I'm pretty open. I'm not like panicking with any of these guys. Like I guess the least interested I am is like Dan Bilesma, you
I don't
know.
think that's an option
Right.
realistically, anyways. So
Exactly. And I think the names that I'm not interested, I don't think Briere will be interested in either. So I'm kind of just like in wait and see mode completely.
I think that's what's going to happen with the coaching scenario here and situation. Like, I don't think they seriously start getting into it. Probably, I would imagine like late May, early June,
Yeah.
where a lot of the other potential candidates who are coaches already got let go from, the playoff teams that were eliminated, things like
Yeah.
that. So
I
I think we'll see probably into June that'll ramp up that whole search. We probably will see, hey, the Flyers interviewed this person and that person and so
Yeah.
on.
I think a lot of the conversations for the Flyers now are around re-signing the RFAs, uh, deciding who stays and goes on the roster and focusing on the draft and then finding out where they pick in the lottery, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. The other piece of news is this is more minor news, but I guess still important. The Flyers have re-upped their agreement with the Reading Royals for another 2 years, so they will continue to be their ECHL affiliate moving forward. The only way that really comes into play with most times is if like one of the better prospects like Zayd Wisdom spends time down there. Maybe Carson Bjarnason might spend some time in the ECHL this upcoming year, depending on what they do with the coaching, with the goaltending options. So,
For goalies, that's not out of the ordinary at all,
right,
I would say.
exactly. Just because there's only so many slots, right? You really only have four spots to start a guy, and if he's the youngest, which again he's 20 years old,
Yes, yeah.
so I wouldn't be shocked if he plays down there. But good for Reading. I think it's really just a win for them, just that they don't lose that affiliation and can
It seemed
generate that
positive.
interest. Yeah,
It seemed positive. Like if you look at the Reading Royals, just the affiliation with the Phantoms and the Flyers over these past few years, like you haven't noticed any negative situations surrounding all of that. So I think in the end, it's a good thing, right? It's just another system that filters up to the Phantoms and so on, and it's another development ground. Like the ECHL is a league that, not a ton of guys have graduated to the AHL and then graduated to the NHL, but it's happened in the past where guys have made their way from ECHL players to NHL. So it's a valuable league to work your way up, especially for goalies. It's happened for goalies so many times where they've worked themselves up from an ECHL level goaltender to actually starting in the NHL. So I
yeah.
think for the Flyers, to have that other level where if guys potentially aren't performing can get sent down, I think it just breeds internal competition, right? So
Yeah, and they've had some success. Obviously, Gocher,
yeah,
he came up and successful in the AHL now, playing number one center. Parker Gahagan is now playing their top goaltending role, and we'll talk about him later in the show. And then Brandon Fury, who's like kind of an under the radar guy, he led the team in shorthanded goals this year. So again, these are all ECHL players that kind of made their way up to the AHL and found success. So I think the Flyers are happy with them. I don't know if a 2-year deal is a long deal in this kind of consideration, but
I
at
think
least
maybe
the extension.
standard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it might be standard. All right. The next thing I wanted to point out is something about Jamie Drysdale, and this comes from Jay Fresh. Just a piece of interesting information. So it's the fastest NHL defenseman of 2024-25. Jamie Drysdale found his name at the top of these lists, which were pretty interesting. We always knew he was a great skater. He was actually healthy this year. He was tied for 13th overall in sustained speed, mile per hour, 23.3. So that's pretty good. He was number one on the list in most uh, 18 plus miles per hour bursts per 60 at 25.4, a full mile per hour above Luke Hughes. So very interesting there. And then he was third on the list in most 20 plus miles per hour bursts per 60, just behind Jake Sanderson at number one and Cale Makar at two. While this is not an indication of necessarily NHL success, it does show that he at least is getting his skates moving again, right? This is a guy who dealt with a lot of injuries. We saw that in the second half of the season, he looked like a very different player than the first half of the season. He struggled quite a bit to start the year. And I think my guess is that a lot of that success of the skating came from his second half performance, because he was healing from another offseason surgery, which is easy to forget. But the kid's got wheels, so if he can put everything together, I mean, we've wanted kind of a speedy defenseman with offensive skills for a while. Obviously, he's not quite there yet, though he was showing hints of it this season. But if he can keep his legs moving, keep playing defense the way he was playing, he was no longer a net negative in his own zone. Again, his breakouts are very important to this team, and skating the puck out of the zone is a huge incentive to develop a guy like this. So I just thought it was an interesting piece of information just to see the guy was skating well. Also, Travis Sanheim did find his name on this list as well, for the most 18 plus miles per hour burst per 60. He was number 17th on the list, and the most 20 miles per hour burst per 60. He was tied for 15th on the list with Quinn Hughes. So again, I think most of this comes from 5-on-5. The Flyers were generally decent, middle of the road at 5-on-5 this year. So Good to see. Good to see the Flyers are kind of moving their skates and skating the puck out of their zone, which is probably a big part of it, and also getting back. And this is why you need speed on the back end.
Yeah, some interesting stats. I mean, I think it just conveys, like you said, how great of a skater that Drysdale is. And I think as the season went along, you saw his play only get better just due to the core muscle surgery that he had, right? We know those surgeries can affect skating. I think arguably you could definitely see him get faster throughout the year. I think that's a pretty safe bet to make and safe thing that we saw throughout the season. If you look at it too, and just the other names that kind of surround him on these lists, right? Like you see for top sustained speed, you see like Quinn Hughes, Jacob Slavin, Lane Hudson, Eric Carlson, Cale Makar, Jake Sanderson, Philip Broberg. For the most 18 plus mile per hour burst per 60, like he's with like Luke Hughes, Sanderson again, Sean Walker, Lane Hudson, Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes. Same with the other list, same type of guys, right? Like you hear Sanderson again, Makar, Pareko, Hughes, Brandon Montour, Zach Werenski, Eric Carlson, Owen Zellweger. So just the names he's amongst. Like I think what this signifies to me is he's at least due to his skating gonna be a passable NHL defenseman at the very minimum, right? If he gets to that next level now, we'll see. That remains to be seen. But I think the skating alone will make him impactful just because skating the puck out of your own end, like you said, is so important in this league. Just having skating ability as a defenseman in general, being able to transition and be a quick defenseman is really, really valuable. So I think at this point, like he's guaranteed to be impactful in some capacity for sure on like a second, third pair. Now I think can he take the next step and develop those offensive skills to potentially, be a first pairing guy? I think that's what the Flyers ultimate goal is for him. Obviously, it's like a slow cook in terms of his development, just due to all the injuries and just his development path so far with how Anaheim handled him. But I think this is a great first step, right? This season, just the way that he really progress throughout, right? We saw him kind of struggle to start and then really take it to a new level in the second half. I think now hopefully you see Drysdale build off that and continue to get even better. But I think when you see a list like that and you see the names he's surrounded by, you can only be encouraged, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, we're far beyond the days of the Flyers being a slow team. They still need more speed, but at least they have some speed in a league that demands it. And it's good to see that we at least have one young guy who's like a speedy defenseman that could develop into more. I think it's very important, especially when we talk about the power play. And this is why the next coach matters. It's like, how is he going to use these guys? How is he going to use Drysdale? How is he going to use York, right? Because I think that's where the Flyers need the most shakeup is how a lot of guys were being used on special teams, especially on the power play. So we'll see how things change. So the other big news, and I'm gonna share my screen here, is it is official. I did state this on the last episode that it would be Monday, May 5th, but the lottery draft officially starts then, and we will have a much better idea on when the Flyers select in this upcoming draft. And again, maybe after the first round, we might know about the next two first round picks, whether it be Colorado or Edmonton, if either one of them gets eliminated. We'll have a better idea of that. So we're going to sim the lottery just for funsies. One thing I do want people to realize, the system that's baked, and Vasili and I both work in tech, the system that's built into Tankathon is not the same system built, that they use to actually select the lottery draft. They actually use like old school balls and all that. It's not going to be the same.
This is like an algorithm, yeah.
Yeah, this
It's
is an
really different.
algorithm, right? This is a mathematical equation that's executed in lines of code versus, physical balls. So don't take these results too seriously. This is more just for fun. Again, I think we'd all be pretty happy if the Flyers end up with the fourth pick in the draft. Their highest odds are the fifth pick in the draft. And again, all that changes as, I guess balls are selected, the odds all shift. It's game theory essentially, where odds shift as you kind of move as you make selections. So again, we'll find out on Monday. I'm very excited for that. Let's sim the
Let's
lottery
do
and
it.
see where the Flyers land.
Oh, let's
Hey!
go. All
I
right,
mean,
so let's just
everything I was saying was bullshit. This is
so
exactly what's gonna happen.
I think we should just end the episode now.
Right, yeah, on a high
Goodbye
note.
everybody. This is where you leave on a high note.
Yeah. Yeah,
And for
no,
anybody listening to the audio version, we sim the tankathon. The Flyers moved all the way to first. So hey, that would be the best case scenario,
yeah.
obviously, for them.
And Seattle moved up to second overall, which I think would be ideal for us, just
Yeah.
with Boston not being shifted down there and all Western Conference teams getting
This
the top four. This is
this
like
would be the
most
best
ideal.
scenario. Yeah, this
Yes.
would be the best thing ever. But hey,
Yeah.
maybe this is maybe this is something that we'll see on Monday. You never know, right?
Yeah. I have a feeling that this draft, like, I think the top five is generally easier to predict than the rest of the draft, but
Yeah.
I don't know if these rankings really matter. Like they have the Flyers taking Michael Misa first of all. I don't know if the Flyers would actually do that, even though that might be their number one need. They still have a need for a number one defenseman.
I
If
think they'd take Schaefer if they get
Right,
first, in my opinion.
exactly. And it's like if Schaefer is the guy, that they deem to be the best player of this lot, with the highest chance of success, I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing to go take out a defenseman and be like, okay, well, defense is all set now, right? Now we just need to find a centerman, right? And we do have Jet Luchenko down there, who is Flyers' best prospect in the system, out at least as skater. And Bonk is a really good defensive prospect, but he doesn't project to be a number one defenseman or anything. So they also need number one D man. So look, ideally, this would be the best case scenario, and the Flyers can take whatever they want with that first overall pick. They could also, which is extremely, and I will emphasize this, extremely unlikely, they could trade back and get additional assets if they wanted to move down from one to two or three or something like that, and then still end up with one of the top players in the draft and get additional assets. But that's not normal. I will say I cannot get a good read of how I think the Flyers will draft beyond Schaefer in this one. Like I see Misa's numbers and they are crazy. You know what I mean?
They're
Like they're
really good.
so
Yeah.
good. But I also like don't know if the Flyers view like I think about how Canada passed him up, and I obviously a stupid decision to not add them to their World Junior roster. It doesn't make any sense, especially on the surface. But I kind of think like why, you know, and maybe he doesn't project to be an NHL centerman. Like maybe teams view him more as a winger at
I
the
think that
NHL
could
level.
be perhaps it. Yeah.
That would hurt
Um,
his draft stock slightly, where guys like maybe Hagens, and teams really looking for a center. And again, Hagens is playing in a tougher league in the NCAA. So I just don't know.
yeah, we'll have to see. Like I think for the centers, and this is all wishful thinking, right? Like if they end up being first, I think it obviously makes their lives a lot easier. If they pick between fourth and sixth, which is going to be the most realistic here, obviously it's a lot more difficult to make the selection. Personally, I mean, you can't go wrong, in my opinion, if you have a chance at either any of Hagen's, Frondell, or Misa. I think that's a really great situation to be in if you're the Flyers. So if
Yeah.
any of three of those guys are available, if you're at four, five, or six, I think ideally you might have your pick of who might be better, but I think all three guys might be impactful. Frondell, based on what Steve said to us, I think and I hope that's who the Flyers would choose if they were in that situation, but we'll have to see, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I have no strong opinion on how the Flyers should go in this draft as of right now. Like I didn't look at any of these guys and go, oh, they're not what we need, you know. The only one
You
that
can
I
make
has
arguments for a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah, the only one, and this is completely uneducated, is I look up Caleb Denoyer. One, I don't believe in the Q as much as the other leagues. Like
I agree.
I don't know about those stats in compared to the others, just because it's the weaker of the leagues. And I also look at the fact that his brother was also very good in the Q and didn't materialize into much at this level. And again, that doesn't mean he won't. And it's kind of a stupid argument, but that's kind of like my um my gut, which I'm like, I don't know if that's
I
like,
feel I don't
again, I've
feel
never even
exactly
seen the
this.
kid play.
Yeah, I don't feel exactly the same. But I see your point. Like you're looking at the QMJHL versus all these other leagues. It's, historically the weaker league. Personally, if you had your option of like Higgins, Frondell, Desnoyers, Misa, Desnoyers is at the bottom of that list just based on the fact he's played in the queue. That's
Yeah.
that's my way to look at it, right? Because think about all these other guys are playing against a, more talented competition. Ultimately, that'll make them a better player. But that's the way I view it. But you never know, right? Sometimes you can develop more playing in a league that might not be as difficult because you have more time and space to do things and try other things. That
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean you can translate that to the next league though when you do make that step up. So
Yeah. I look at a guy like Jake O'Brien as a guy that I would probably take over Caleb Denoyer. And again, this is being like pretty uneducated about this draft. But the little
yeah.
research that I've done, that's where it kind of leads me to go.
Well, it's our first sim of the lottery live on this show, and
And
look at us go.
we're never doing another one. So that's the only one you guys are getting, and the Flyers won. So hopefully that's good juju. Though I have found that these are completely irrelevant when
Usually, yeah.
when when coming to the lottery draft. It is yet to predict any of the movements for me. All right. Next piece of topic, and the game is actually kicking off right now, 7:07. So it should be starting right now. But the Phantoms are facing Hershey in the second round. This is going to be a
Tough one.
huge matchup for them. Hershey has been very successful in the past, not as much this year, and the Phantoms are the best they have been in several years, especially with the addition of Luchenko and Bump of late, which has been a huge boost to the team. They do play tonight, which is Wednesday, April 30th. The game two is May 2nd. Game three is May 4th. And the other two games, if necessary, are Friday, May 9th and Sunday, May 11th. So I could see this series going the full five, even. But it's going to be a tough matchup for the Phantoms. Having said that, do want to talk about how Jet Luchenko was one of the leaders of the team. He has 4 assists in 2 playoff games so far, so already more assists in those 2 games than he had in all the 9 games that he played prior to that in the regular season. He clearly is adjusting. They were beautiful assists as well. They weren't just, oh, he happened to touch the puck. He clearly set the play up. And the playmaker in him is definitely coming out, and I'm very excited to see how he does against a stronger opponent like Hershey. And I have a feeling he's going to continue to get better. And I like this matchup for the Phantoms because I think they're much better than their regular season record. And so far, sweeping Wilkes-Barre Scranton has been very nice to see because it felt like they were in control that whole series, even though the second game was a lot closer. They still looked like the better team in that one. So I really hope that they can at least take this 1-5, but I'd love for them to upset Hershey here and move on to the next round. What are your thoughts about just facing Hershey and Luchenko? And then we're going to talk about Gahagan.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, just to start off, right, Hershey's a great team. I believe they won the last two Calder Cups, if I'm not mistaken. So it'll be a tough out for the Flyers, but I think it's a great measuring stick kind of test, and it's a test that you want to put your young players to, right? Like they played really well against Wilkes-Barre Scranton. We obviously have to see how they're going to do against a much stronger team in Hershey and a team that has a lot of experience. But I would say if you're the Flyers brass, this is exactly the situation you want your young players to be in, right? You're playing a top team that's been there and done that before, tons of playoff and Calder Cup experience for Hershey. So you're playing a really grizzled team. If you're the Phantoms and you can put up a really valiant effort and a valiant fight against a team that's had so much playoff success, I think it speaks volumes to their development as a team in general, and it'll speak volumes to helping a lot of their younger players take next steps because you're playing a team that's has such established success in the AHL. if you're a young team and you're able to take them to the brink, like you said, Yariv, that's just invaluable for these players and for their careers going ahead. I don't know if they'll be able to do it, but just with the way they've played so far, it's been encouraging. They've looked like you know a team that's been playing together as a five-man unit for me from the Phantoms games I've watched against Wilkes-Barre there. So it'll be interesting to see if they can have it continue over against Hershey. I would say much better team, but I think the Phantoms right now are feeling good about themselves the way they played in that initial three-game series and kind of swept Wilkes-Barre Scranton there. So we'll see what happens. In terms of Lutsenko, just the vision and creativity, you're seeing it starting to come out, right? Like to your point, two really great setups for Richard on those goals. So I would say when you look at Lutsenko's play so far, you can't ask for anything more, right? He's just entering the pro sphere in terms of an extended look in pro hockey here. So for him to be playing this well to start and essentially leading the AHL in playoff scoring after the first round with the assists there, really, really great sign, right?
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. So actually, Bob Roadtruck just tweeted out the lines for tonight, so I'll read them out. There are some minor changes in there. Top line is still Ule Excel, uh, Jacob Goche, and Zayd Wisdom. And again, these are just balanced. It seems like that's what LaPerriere is going with. The second line being Nikita Gabrankin, Rodrigo Abels, and Alex Bump moved to the right side. And then Garrett Wilson, the captain, is playing left wing with Jet Luchenko and Anthony Richard. And then the fourth line is Eklund, Rhett Gardner, and Giovanni Smith. They will
Veteran,
be, yeah, they will
veteran
be
line.
the big, again, all big guys on that fourth line playing the
And have played pro
checking
hockey
role.
for a long, long time. So
True. And then the defense is pretty much exactly the same. McDonald's playing with Belpedio, Andre playing with Ethan Sampson, and then Yinning with Helge Grans, and then Parker Gehagen is still starting with Elias Pettersson. I also want to bring up some stats on Gehagen. This is also a tweet by Bob Rochuck, which is just really this story behind Parker Gehagen. Again, we were talking about him for a while, how he was outplaying Peterson for a significant amount of time. But Parker Gehagen's numbers in the playoffs, he's 2-0, a 2.02 goals against average, and a .937 save percentage. And then Gehagen, since December 28th, regular season and playoffs included, is 13-3-1 with a 1.93 goals against average and a .933 save percentage. For those of you wondering, is he the up and coming goaltender for the Flyers? No, he is 31 going on 32. But still an incredible story for a guy who's been mostly an ECHL goaltender and is now, at least statistically, been one of the best goaltenders in the AHL this year and has done a very good job as of right now. And since you're the goalie, I'll let you speak to the credibility of those numbers.
I mean, it's a feel-good story to just see him rise from the ECHL to this level, put up these numbers. You'd love to see something like that, right? It's not every day that you do see that happen. So I just think with the way he's played and the fact he's been able to sustain it, and the Phantoms didn't I wouldn't want to say exploit him, but like they didn't bring him in when they were having these issues with Makanyemi getting injured and Kolosov and all those things, and even Pedersen was hurt, I believe, for a bit at some point in season two. Like they didn't just bring him in and use him as a stopgap and send him back to the ECHL, right? Like he came up, he performed well. They gave him the opportunity after that performance. And I think that speaks to firstly the organization and how they do right by their players, but it also speaks to the fact that he earned his spot and where he's at right now, right? Like he has been their best goalie in the AHL, the Phantoms, that is. He's played really well. Obviously, look at the stats that Yariv just mentioned. He's been lights out for them. So why wouldn't you have him in this position? I think it would be oblivious of you to start Cal Peterson here just because he has that name recognition of and has had that past NHL experience when he hasn't played nearly as well as Gehagen at the same level this season, right? Like I think it would be a disservice to the team to put a guy like Peterson in when you have Gehagen playing this well. So for me, I think it's just a really encouraging thing to see the Flyers reward first of all, Gehagen for his play, and to also just go with the goalie who's been your better goalie this season, even though he isn't, a guy that you had penciled in to be in the mix really when this season began.
Yeah, and you're paying the other guy $5 million a year, and Gehagen is
Yeah,
probably getting paid like 100 grand a year.
max
Yeah,
probably. So
right. Um, but problem there's a good chance that he's going to be an AHL goalie for the Flyers next year if he continues to do what he's doing. So, all right, let's get into the second half of the show. We'll talk about NHL playoffs, and then we'll end with some Flyers prospect updates. So, just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for notifications. Get notified when we release these episodes. And for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes. Give us a rating and a follow as well if you can. Um, if you haven't done that so far, please do so now. All right. So I'm gonna share my screen again. I thought that was pretty good. We'll just go through the the current playoff bracket for the NHL, and we can just take the series one by one. We'll start with the most controversial, Toronto and Ottawa. Toronto had a chance to close out the series. They were up 3-1, lost that game 4-0, and the panic has already set in. I was listening to Steve Dangle, and he looked like somebody murdered his dog after that game. And you can just feel it. This is a team that is 1-13 in elimination games.
what a
They have,
stat, eh?
yeah,
Crazy
they
stat.
are a failure when it comes to big games in the playoffs. And as of right now, they have not been able to close out Ottawa. The series has been close in general, but this was the most lopsided game, in a game that you thought Toronto would come out and be the better team and win. And I would say they didn't play horrendously. Not as bad as the 4-0 loss looks, but they obviously didn't play well enough to win that game. So the panic has now set in. I still believe Toronto will close it out. They've gotten past the first round last year, but against Ottawa, who is not a bad team by any stretch. But when Toronto is clear cut the superior team and they're not facing like Boston in the first round, you know, you would think they'd be able to close this one out. I don't think it's embarrassing if you close it out in 6 or even 7. Um, but they got to. I mean, this is you're talking about really bad things could happen
Hey, if
if
they
they
lose this,
lose.
if they lose this, it's basically you have to blow this team up at this point. If you lose this series in this fashion, it has to happen. That's my thought process because if you're the first team in this division winning the Atlantic Division and then you go up 3-0 and lose to the wild card spot team, firstly, the team's also in your division and is in the same province. That's just a narrative that is going to run wild. And I don't think the team will be able to even deal with the repercussions of it in that locker room after it. Like you'll just naturally have to blow up the team
And they
after something
lost at
like that.
home. They lost 4-0 at home, which maybe it
Yeah,
doesn't
well,
play in their favor, you know.
yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think they played a bad game. Like you held Ottawa to 17 shots in that game
Right.
and lost for nothing. Like they didn't play bad. I don't think there's as much panic. I think it's panic amongst the fan base. Like I live in Toronto, so if you'd like turn the radio on this morning or went on any Toronto media website at all, like a newspaper or anything, it was like, oh my God, it's happening again, basically. Like that's basically the narrative. Like you would go if you went online today and you're in Toronto, or if you turn on the radio, like sports radio in Toronto today, it would sound like the Leafs were losing 3-2 right now and
Right.
going in to get eliminated basically. That's
Yeah.
the narrative, which really they're up. So it's kind of crazy like the way we're seeing it being portrayed, but it's just because of that 1-13 in elimination games that this is already beginning. I think they're going to close it out, the Leafs, in 6 in Ottawa. I think the fact that they're going to Ottawa and they're not going to
Helps
be at
them.
home,
Helps
actually,
them.
it's less
Yeah.
pressure. If they were going like if it was vice versa now and it was switched and like they were going back home, then I'd be like, oh no, guaranteed game 7. Um, but if to your point though, if they lose game 6, it's over. Ottawa's winning the series. Like you come back from 3-0, typically you win. Like we look at it with the Flyers. We saw what happened, with Boston. When you have that momentum like that after being up 3-0 and you lose
You
it, it's real
believe
hard
you
to
can do it. Yeah.
yeah, it's really hard to get it back. And they have Giroux on that team who's done it, and he's probably saying to these guys, I've been here and done this. We can
Yes.
do it.
True.
So that's something to point out. But like I just don't think it'll get past game six.
That
Like
would be
I think the Leafs have been a really good team in the series. Like Ottawa probably shouldn't have won the last game. Like you usually don't win 4-0 when you only get 17 shots on
right.
net. There's a little bit of luck involved. They had two floaters from the point. Like stuff happens. But man, if Ottawa wins game six, like it's over for the Leafs, in my opinion.
It is pretty good, especially with what they invested in the trade deadline and the moves they made. Like they're the superior team, and they have not been able to close it out. I think they're going to close it out in six as well. It would be crazy if Giroux is part of two comeback from down 3-0 teams. That has to be like
A
he's got to be
record,
the
yeah.
only one that because there's only
It's
four
so
teams that have
slim.
ever done it.
Yeah, it's such a like slim margin. How would you have been on two teams that have done that?
Right.
Like, yeah, I would imagine he might be, if not the only one, there might be like maybe one other guy or something that is
Right. Yeah.
escaping us. But
Yeah, but pretty crazy. Good luck to Leafs fans. Don't have a heart attack.
oh
It's kind
yeah,
of funny, especially as being somebody who has nothing involved in either one of those games. Um, I don't want the Leafs to suffer like that, you know. I think they're too good of a team too, so I do expect them to take it. We'll see what happens. But I do love Giroux, so I can be happy about that if he pulls it off. Also, next series, the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Florida Panthers. Ekblad has just been suspended for the next two games of this series, which is
for that hit, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
for the hit. That is probably somewhat of a shift in this series. Again, Florida has been the better team. They are probably on paper the best team in the league, and they are the returning champs. I do think that they will win this series, but I could see it going to six. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I can't believe Florida like won the last game. Like I can't believe Tampa choked that. Like they were up 2-1 in the third. I thought they were winning for or 2-1 in the second, and then I thought they were winning for sure, and they came on the third and completely laid an egg. Like Ekblad scores, Jones scores like 2 seconds later, basically after that.
yeah.
And it's just game over from there. I would say like for Tampa, I mean, this is almost feeling like the end of an era, right? Like this is like the third or fourth round now in a row where they're getting eliminated in the first round. Like I think at this point, like I don't know if there's gonna be bigger changes than we've seen this past offseason, but it might signal that. But yeah, I think Florida's definitely on their way to taking this one.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's. I don't know if Tampa Bay is going to take it too seriously because they're playing the best team in the league in the first
Maybe.
round, but they, with the talent they see on their roster and the investment that they made, the trading the first round picks and everything to get them, um, you know, we'll see. It's a tough matchup for them, but they're gonna. The next game's going to be a battle, which I believe is on tonight. And then Washington, Montreal.
That's live right now as
Yep,
we speak.
Yep. By the way, the Phantoms are down 1-0, halfway through the first.
Boo.
Not yet, boo. Washington is up 3-1 in the series. Montreal did have fight in the last game, but Washington ended up winning that game. The score made it look more, lopsided than it was. They had two empty netters. But
Yeah.
I do think Washington's going to beat them in five still. That was kind of how I saw this series going. But I think Montreal has done a good job battling. I think they're just the weakest team in the playoffs,
Yeah,
in general.
they don't stack up to Washington's roster. I think it was great gamesmanship from Washington. Like you had Thompson in the morning skate, didn't know if he was going to play, ends up playing. That was pretty funny. I really thought that was cool. I mean, for me, I know Dobich was in last game. Is he in tonight? Yeah, Dobich in again for Montreal. There, I mean, for me that
Montembeau is injured, right?
yeah, I think that spells the end for them, right? Like Montebo's hurt. He's been really good for them this season. I think he's one of the actually best goalies in the league. He's real underrated. He's kind of been hated on that Montreal team because they've been so bad. But it's unfortunate because he's been really good. So I think if they had him, it might be a little closer to kind of end the series out. But with Dobich in there, like I think Washington closes it out tonight, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Well, Canadians are out shooting them 5-1 right now, early in that game, so they at least
Yeah.
came out to play. And then the
Carolina defeats the Devils 4-1.
yeah,
As you
yeah.
see on the screen, we talked about that overtime last night. It was a crazy OT. I mean, I just think, like we said earlier, you're New Jersey, you don't have Jack Hughes. That's just too much for them to overcome against a team like Carolina. If
Yeah.
they somehow were in a higher position, like if they finished first in the division and got to face like a Montreal or an Ottawa, maybe they would, I think, been able to like um potentially, make it out of round one. But just without Hughes and you're facing a caliber team like Carolina, it's just I don't think they can overcome it, right?
Yeah, I think Carolina's a damn good team and have a damn good coach, and they don't really have flaws. Yes, they did lose Rantanen, they did lose Natchez, but obviously Stankoven is a really good young star
The
to have.
goaltending, right?
Yeah, good goaltending, defense is as
Well,
deep
I
as
was
you
saying the
can think.
goaltending might be the flaw, is what I was saying. Just
Well,
because Anderson got hurt again, now it's
yeah, that's
Kochetkov. So,
that's their problem is that Anderson cannot stay healthy, and we'll see. Because injuries are always part of the story for the playoff run. So, assuming they play Washington, that should be a hell of a battle
oh
in the
yeah,
next round. Like crazy, crazy
that'll
hard.
be a real
And
good
and that's
series.
the thing about the Leafs. Like, even if they get to the next round, or assuming they do, they're gonna have to play Florida, and
Yeah,
that
right.
that is not a good matchup for them. And during the regular season was not a good matchup for them. So, um, again, I kind of see Florida making it out of the East, and maybe it'll be Carolina, Florida. Though I wouldn't be surprised if Washington goes the distance, just because of their depth. They kind
Yeah,
of
they've
shocked people all year. So why
and
not
people haven't given them
continue?
credit. They've been a really good team. So,
Right, exactly. Over to the West.
where it's significantly closer for like every series.
It was funny because at one point every series in the West was 2-2. And then all of
Yeah.
the series were 3-1 in the East, which is funny. Um, which shows kind of like how much closer the West is or how much more talented it is to some degree. So we talked about Winnipeg, St. Louis. We said that this one would come down to the wire. I still think this is going 7 games.
Me too.
I thought St. Louis would give a hell of a battle. I wouldn't be surprised if St. Louis wins it, to be honest with you. I think they're kind of like Washington of the West, where I think they're better than people want to give them credit for. And we'll see. I don't think Winnipeg plays the best defense, and I think St. Louis is stingy, even though there's a talent difference there. So it's kind of like talent versus stinginess in a way. I don't know. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, well, I said the same thing. I was picking St. Louis in seven, I believe, but I just thought their stretch heading into the playoffs are just on such a heater. That's going to benefit you. And then you look at Hellebuyck, right? Like the past two playoff runs, not great performances. Once again, he's kind of having the same troubles in the playoffs, and I don't know if it's on him or the way Winnipeg's playing defense. It's probably a bit of both, but I just think they weren't expecting him to once again have another playoff that's been underwhelming so far. And if you look at Binnington, right, like he's been lights out since the Four Nations. So I don't know who you give the edge to now in the 2-2 series, but I think St. Louis takes it for my end of things.
Okay, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
All right, the one series that well, one of the two series that actually matters to us as bystanders. So Dallas is leading Colorado 3-2. They had a very big victory over Colorado. Again, still without Heiskanen, still without Robertson. They
Which is so
lead,
impressive.
yeah,
Yeah.
arguably the most talented team in the West, at least on paper. But Dallas being the deepest, obviously. And I'm really hoping that they can beat Colorado in the next game. I really want the higher first round pick. That's what I care about. Dallas is incredibly impressive bunch. We'll see how things go. We'll see how things develop, especially if they have a really tough series in the first round. But if they can get Heiskanen and Robertson back as they move forward, that's going to be a humongous boost for them. So we'll see how things develop there. But I really want to see Dallas pull this out at this point.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best thing for the Flyers, obviously in the draft position. I would say just watching this series, I think Dallas has been the better team as of late. Like Colorado started out guns a blazing and looked like, hey, like they have a chance to take it, but Dallas has really stormed back and control play these last few games here. So I'm giving the edge to Dallas just due to that. And I mean, if you look at it too, I think Colorado's chance was really heading back, to Colorado. I think the fact that now, they're losing and like they're already down 3-2. Like I just think the writing's on the wall for them. Like I think when they were in Colorado, it was their chance to take a stranglehold in the series, and now the fact they weren't able to do that, I think Dallas is going to take it.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Game six. Game six is going to be in Colorado, though, isn't it?
No, but I mean, like I'm saying, like when they were back in Colorado, like for game 3 and 4, like I think they had the chance to take the stranglehold and they did, and that's going to
Oh,
be the difference essentially.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Huge. Let's go Dallas. Then Vegas, Minnesota. Minnesota putting up a hell of a fight against Vegas. They had a lead in the series at one point at 2-1. Now Vegas has won the last two games. I
Yeah.
think there's a good chance they're going to close it out in the next game. But man, is Kaprizov good. Um, and Minnesota's, they're a good team. It's they're a little earlier along, but Vegas is still Vegas. They're still deep. They still have tons of talent. They know how to win.
Vegas looks really good in the series.
Yeah.
Like they were down a little bit, storming back. Obviously, they were down 2-1 in the series at a point. I think for Minnesota, it's going to be tough now. Like if Gustafson's hurt for any prolonged period, I think that'll be a rough one for them. Like obviously, you have Fleury there, great backup, tons of experience, but I mean Gustafson's your number one for a reason over Fleury at this
I think
point. So
he
I
he
think.
sat because of illness though. I think he was sick. Is that what I saw?
Well, he got pulled. I mean, he
Pull.
got pulled. I don't know if it
I
exactly
think it
was
was
due to
because he was
sickness,
sick.
but
Yeah, I think it was illness that he wasn't feeling well. Played the game
okay.
anyway. So
Interesting. Because you only let him two, so that's weird. But
yeah,
yeah,
I think that's why. I think he kind of went into it thinking he could battle through it, and then was like, all right, I'm not 100%, and we need to win.
okay. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. So we'll see. And then the last series, the Kings did have the lead on the Oilers. They have won the last two games. All incredibly tough games, but man, Edmonton just like really took over that last game.
I can't believe that it was like I can't believe Edmonton stormed back. I thought when LA was up 2-0, it was basically writing on the
Yeah,
wall for them. It just shows McDavid and Drysdale what they can do. Like LA cannot contain their
insane.
speed. Their defense is a little bit slower. When they take flight, man, like they just cannot contain them, unfortunately, and it's showing just why these guys are the best players in the world in terms of Drysdale and McDavid because you have LA that's probably one of the best defensive teams in the league. And how many goals have they been giving up on a game-to-game basis here, which is super uncharacteristic for them? It's just not a good matchup for LA. I think any other team in the West probably would have been a better first-round matchup for them than Edmonton. They would probably tell you that, right?
Yeah, and we did say, I think we both picked Edmonton in this series, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
And we said don't bet against McDavid and Drysdale. You don't bet against, best players in the world.
it's tough.
Doesn't usually pan
I will say
out.
this though, for the rest of the playoffs, the fact that it's Cal Pickard in net for them, I don't think that bodes them well whatsoever, especially if you're going up against Vegas. Like, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
after this round how it's going to go for them. We'll see,
yeah.
but
Vegas is not going to be easier than LA, that's for sure. It's definitely going to be a
no.
tougher matchup for
More
them.
scoring prowess too, I would imagine. So,
Yes. But I again, I'm hoping Edmonton still loses this series. Looking like they might take it at this point,
yeah.
just because of how it's trending. But hopefully they lose against Vegas at least. I want the best picks possible, and that was a 31st pick in the draft that the Flyers traded, so that could pan out really well for them if it went up from 31 to in the 20s.
Yeah, it could be a lot better.
Yep. So hopefully another good trade by Danny Briere. All right, that's it for the playoffs. So we'll wrap up here with a couple prospect updates. This one is about Igor Zavragin, who has been the starting goaltender in the playoffs, in the MHL playoffs for Ska. And I wanted to just point out a couple of tweets by Alexander Appleyard, who always has great insight on European prospects. Zavragin pulled out a win today in SKA 1946 to put them up 3-1 in the MHL semis in front of a crazy 9,500 people crowd. Stopped 19 of 20 and a 9.50 save percentage. Had a shutout until 36 seconds left. He is 6-1-0 in the playoffs with a 9.36 save percentage now with just one game away from the finals. And then he added in a follow-up tweet, only Russian goalies who have been better as a teenager in the last 40 years than Zavragin, Vasilevsky and Samsonov. Varlamov and Sorokin, similar. Step ahead of Bob and Shesterkin, though Shesterkin exploded at 20 years old. All six of those guys, NHL starters, five of six, multiple top 10 Vezina years.
Pretty good company, huh, for the
Yeah.
kid. That's
I,
that's some great company to be in. It's kind of like when we did the comparisons with Mitchkov and all those guys. You're like you're seeing what he's doing relative to other guys in the league. It's kind of like it's almost like, hey, this is a no-brainer. This kid's gonna be really good. You don't want to, put too much pressure, but I mean, this kind of illustrates, exactly how great he might be. So
yes.
something to get excited about for sure.
Absolutely. And even look at Demidov, who he didn't beat Michkov in points per game. He did beat him in overall points. He played a lot more games than Michkov.
Yeah.
In the KHL this year, he had a very, very good KHL season. And now it's translated directly over to the Canadians. And I think he has 4 points in those games. I think he has 1 goal, 3 assists.
Yeah,
And
he's had a couple of assists. He's looked
yeah,
really good.
yeah, it's been on the power play, but still, again, been a big part of their success in the playoffs so far, their offensive success. So those Russian players that are excelling at that high level, it is translating over to the NHL majority of the time. So it's a really good sign this with Zavragin. Again, he still has 2 more years on his contract with Ska. But I do suspect the Flyers will look to bring him over when that contract is done. And there's a good chance they're going to try to bring him over in a backup role at the NHL level. Have another guy, whether it be Erson or somebody else, with him, and then allowing him to kind of win out that starting job. We'll see. But if he continues to do what he does, what he's doing right now, I think there's kind of the writings on the wall there of what his role will be in the NHL because that's he's far exceeding the performances of Erson and Kolosov and the other young
Yeah, it's
goaltenders in
similar
this. Yeah,
ages.
this is like top, top goaltender of your draft type of progress, and actually beyond that, it's like top 15 pick for a goaltender. That's crazy, and we got him in the third round. So, yeah, I cannot wait to see how this kid develops. He might be the goalie we are looking for since Carter Hart has left the organization, and a lot of hope put in that kid. So keep keep
Yeah, we'll
keep
see.
doing it.
We'll see how he does right in the KHL. Still a while away, probably, but it's all encouraging stuff.
Yeah, and we'll have Steve. We'll probably talk about him as well when we have Steve back on the show. Which what do we say for the date? The 17th of June.
Yeah.
We're gonna have Steve on to do a pre-draft show. We'll talk all about the upcoming NHL draft, so look out for that. And then we haven't scheduled the post-draft episode. We'll probably do that a little bit after, maybe like a couple days after the draft, depending on Steve's schedule. And then we'll probably have one post-free agency with him as well, to talk about just the full NHL and the Metro Division in general. And the last piece are the London Knights. They are up 3-0 on the Kitchener Rangers. Denver Barkey, unfortunately, has somewhat maybe a serious injury. He might be out for the rest of the
It's
playoffs.
unfortunate because he's been really good for
Yeah,
them.
he had
So
20 points in 9 games. So he was definitely leading the pack over there in the offensive production category.
hopefully it's not serious, right? Just that's just the luck, right, that you need for a Flyers prospect. I have to hope it's not serious, but I mean he's a young guy, so he'll
Yeah.
recover. He'll be all right.
Yeah, it would hurt his chances to make noise at if it's a serious injury to make noise at camp. But that's okay because he's a long-term project for us regardless. But I will point out, and I was just looking at this, London has not lost a game.
Yeah,
They,
they're really good, right?
yeah, they have not lost a game. They're up 3-0 on Kitchener, and it looks like they're going to play the Oshawa Generals in the next round.
Oh,
Oshawa has done well as well.
they're a good team this year. I mean, it's Memorial Cup or
But they
bust with
have
the Lund.
lost
It's
games.
Memorial Cup or bust for the Knights, right? Like
Yeah,
they've been this powerhouse for years. They always get there. They can never close it. They got to do it this year. Barkey being out does not help them there, though,
no, it
unfortunately.
does
So
not.
hopefully it's not too serious. But the Knights, once again, if you want to watch a good playoff run, they're gonna go real long, most likely. So
Yeah, I mean it's pretty crazy. They haven't lost a game. They are
yeah.
playing right now against Kitchener, and they're up 2-1. So
Yep. So probably closing that series out
I don't
tonight.
think I've ever even seen that where a team doesn't lose a game winning, going all the way to the championship. And again, Oshawa is a good team. They've won their series as well, but they have lost some games. They are up 3-0 on the Barry Colts, but still, wow.
Yeah, they're a junior dynasty, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And there was some talk. I know people were talking about Howard Chuck being a potential coach for the Flyers. I cannot see him leading that program at all, considering he runs the show over there. So,
Yeah, I would not see that happening
yeah,
at all. Yeah.
yeah. All right, that's it from us. Anything you want to add, Vasily?
No, just I mean, we're gonna continue to have shows every week, obviously. I mean, news will potentially be hard to come by for the Flyers, but we're gonna
Yeah,
try to do our best to give you a good show. So thanks to everybody for continuing to support us, even though the Flyers are in the off season essentially now.
yeah. And as of right now, Phantoms are still down 1-0. They're being outshot 12-5. We're gonna watch the rest of that game after we're done recording. Again, thank you everybody for listening. We really appreciate it, guys. Please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for notifications on our YouTube channel. For the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes. Give us a rating and a follow as well. If you haven't done that so far, please, please, please do so. And again, the ratings on audio are also a huge benefit to us. Um, we got recognized for the audio stuff, and our numbers on our video are much better than the audio. So if we could match both, that would be amazing. And also shout out to our sponsors, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Public Summit Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them to help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company. Make sure you get the best claim possible. Public Summit Adjusters, 215-752-0560. And shout out to SportsSpider.com. They are our partners. They aggregate content from all over the internet of articles, videos, podcasts, everything. And our stuff is pinned at the top when we release it. Again, thank you all for listening. Thank you again, Vasily. We love you guys. And remember, always stay free.